Mason is the author of 6 books, a freelance project designer, and an editor whose work can be found in print, online, and on television. She delights in threading her sewing machine and experimenting with newfound fabric-like surfaces. I'm delighted to welcome Lorine Mason. Hi, Lorine.
Hi, Tiffany, and hi, everybody else. Today we're going to do Easter Bunny button eggs. And Tiffany, I believe you have a photo of the project. I did these up real quick, and I do a sheet of them, and I used a wool blend felt is the sewing surface, and we're going to make some here this morning. They're going to be fast and easy. Thanks, Tiffany. You're going to notice a color change here. I got some brighter colors. First of all, let's go over the supplies that you're going to need. Very basic sewing machine. Even if your sewing machine only has a zigzag stitch, you can change up the colors of thread. On the samples you saw, I had a variety of colors of thread. For the purpose of the demo today, I'm only going to use one color of thread, but I would like to talk about the variegated threads. I don't know if you can see that or not. But what these threads do is you can see it there, I think a little bit, is that they change colors. They'll go from dark blue to light blue, and that's really interesting. Let me show you a sample here real quick of when it's stitched. You can see the different colors in there. So that's one of the things I'm going to do. All right, so you need some thread. You need a basic sewing machine, some scissors, some Steam-A-Seam. I love Steam-A-Seam fusible web. It has paper on both sides, and it's a little bit tacky, so when you put it down somewhere on your fabric, and it doesn't matter what kind of fabric, it stays there while you're pressing it. So I really do like that. Wool blend felt, and that can be as simple as 20% wool, 80% viscose. It doesn't have to be real expensive. It doesn't have to be the 100% wool. I find in using the acrylic felt, it just doesn't sew as well, so I do like it to have a little bit of wool in the product, and it comes in absolutely wonderful colors. All right, let's get started. First of all, what you're going to do is you're going to need to make yourself a pattern, and all we need to do is we need to draw an egg. Now, if any of you out there are egg challenged, you probably can use a cookie cutter or something like that. But what I did is I just started with a simple piece of paper. Take your pen, draw half an egg if you want to. I usually don't. I usually just take my scissors, and I simply, on the fold, I cut out my egg shape. And I got a little bit of a point on this egg, but you might want to take that little bit of a point off. And I think he's a little bit too chubby. I find I make really chubby eggs the first time around. And we're going to open up our pattern. Now, real quick before we trace this, I want you to cut a notch at the top and the bottom of the egg. Now, the reason we're doing that, I'm going to switch to a cardstock pattern I have here, is when we trace this, I don't know if you can see the notch up here, and there's a notch a little bit lower down here. The reason you do this is when you trace this onto your felt, you're going to make a little mark at the top and the bottom, and that's going to give us, to make sure that our lines of stitching are going to be straight. So next you do is you take your pattern, lay it on your piece of felt, white. I used white felt so the thread would show up really well. Place the pattern on, and I use a fabric marker, and this one erases. I believe it's a Zig laundry clear violet fabric marker, and you can remove the ink with a little bit of water, or it says it does fade. I never leave things on long enough so they have time to fade, so I always just take a clear water and a damp cloth and wipe off the lines if I need to get rid of them fast. So you're going to trace around your design and make your little notch at the top and the bottom. Then what I usually do is I'll put a number of that pattern onto one piece of felt. Then I take it over to my sewing machine, and I simply, I don't know if you can see the lines in there, they're pretty faint. But anyway, and then I just stitch. So I just choose a decorative stitch, and I just stitch row after row after row. Those little notches up there, if you line your ruler up vertically, you can draw a horizontal line across it and keep those lines straight. What patterns you choose to use, how far apart that the stitching lines are, that is all up to you. It really doesn't matter. But I'll make this little sheet of just decorative stitching. Let me get my samples over here. Once I've got this sheet, I'm going to press fusible web onto the back of it. So I'm going to take this piece here, put the fusible web on the back, and press it well. Then I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them out. So I've got my little egg shape. Let's pretend it's not glued on here. And I cut it out just with regular scissors, cutting. And what you can do is if you don't want to wash off the lines, you can cut just inside those lines that you drew. Then I take it and I press it. I remove the paper backing from the fusible web. I press it onto the back of another color of felt. In this case, I used a bright pink. And you want to leave at least ½ inch, if not 3/4 inch, all around the egg shape. And then you're going to take this piece, and what you can do is you can actually press fusible web to the back of a whole sheet of pink if you're making a number of them, or just press the fusible web. You can see it where I've got it pressed to the back of this little piece here. But you need to press that before you start cutting it out. Then I use scallop scissors, and you can use pinking shears. I just happen to have these scallop scissors that I love. And you're simply going to start cutting out around, if you can see it there, cutting out around the egg shape pretty close to the egg, but leaving a little bit of that pink. All right, the next step is, we'll get rid of that, is we're going to then remove the paper backing from the fusible web that was back on the pink, and I'm going to press it to another sheet, whatever color that you want the back of your egg to be. In this case, I've got a real pretty kind of a pistachio green, and you're going to press it to the back of that. What I do then is I fold that in half, leaving about a 3/4 inch border, and I just trim that just with regular scissors because I'm going to take this under my sewing machine. So I don't know if you can see me or not, but I'm just going to cut like so. So I've got 2 layers of felt and on the green. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch using my presser foot as a guide. I usually stitch out as far away as the presser foot is. It's about a ½ inch. And I just have my presser foot follow along the scalloped edge and I stitch around. And that is what I have done with this one, leaving an opening on one side. Can you see the stitching lines here? Okay, leaving the opening. The reason for the opening is that we're going to have batting stuffed in there. And I just poke my finger in there, fill it up with batting. Then what I do is I try to shove most of the batting over to one side, so this area here that I'm going to need to restitch is going to lie flat. I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, and I know you can't see this, but give me 2 seconds here, and I'm going to stitch this. And all I'm doing is continuing stitching around the line. Okay, so all I did is I continued stitching right here. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our scissors again and we're going to cut around our egg, leaving about 3/8 inch, a ½ inch, and just keep cutting around that shape. And you've got your Easter egg. Now we need to decorate this Easter egg. Now I had used, on the samples that Tiffany showed, I had used buttons. So you can take and you can sew these buttons on. Now if I was going to sew them on, I actually would have sewn them on a little earlier, probably at this stage of the game. But you can glue them on as well if you're really just tired of sewing. And just sew the buttons on there. The other thing I really like to use is these tiny little ribbon roses. And a good friend and I went out to, we found a Berwick Offray outlet. And they have great buys out there. So I bought all kinds of packages of these little ribbon roses and things. So I think I would tend to decorate with the ribbon roses. And then you also need a ribbon loop so that it can have a little tie. Now what I like to do with these is, if you don't stuff them too much, what you can do is you can pop one in an envelope and you can send it to someone. And if they want, they can hang it in their car, they can hang it in the window on a little suction cup. I tend to hang them off of doorknobs, things like that around Easter time. Think of the lovely little color combinations that you can come up with. One of the other eggs that I did, I don't know if you noticed in the picture, is I simply had one that was cracked. So I took my pattern and I sliced it, and you can see that real close there. And so I have a cracked egg there.